Welcome everyone, my name is Jordan Farmer. This is the Uncommon Ground YouTube channel where we are indoctrinating the masses, and today I'm going to be talking about homelessness, what causes it, and how we can fix it. So homelessness is a great example of what I call surface level issues, which just, it doesn't mean that it's a shallow issue or not a serious issue. It just means that it happens, like, so obviously the cause of homelessness is not having a home. That's the surface level issue. But it emerges out of underlying circumstances. It doesn't just happen on its own. It's a specific outcome with a specific causal chain, or a series of potential causal chains that lead to that surface level issue. So the underlying forces of homelessness are lack of economic opportunity and expensive housing, mental health issues, and drug addiction. Those are the main ones, at least. In terms of economic opportunity, I've talked a lot about that. Just check out my economic videos. In terms of expensive housing, I'll sort of circle back to that. I've talked about that a bit in terms of policy, but I'd like to circle back to that. And then you have mental health or mental illness, mental health issues, and then you have drug addiction. And those are pretty much the only things there. I don't know anyone that would just volunteer to be homeless. I guess you could hypothetically get your house stolen from you through some sort of identity theft racket or something. But, you know, for the most part, that's not what we're talking about. So, on the mental health, mental illness front, I believe in a universal health savings account, and that money could be used to support anyone's mental health services, whether it be drugs that they need for medications, or if they need counseling, they can use that money for whatever they want. And I just want to understand that homelessness is such an extreme problem, or an extreme situation, that government intervention and sort of telling these people, like, we're going to take over your life a little bit and try to get you to a place where you're now a contributing member to society, or at least just healthy and able to be a good member of society. Even if you're not a contributing one, at least you can just be in a healthy spot. Government intervention and having some sort of government-led policy to solve these kinds of issues, I think, is called for. It just, you have to be careful, and you have to make sure that the structure of those agencies and the structure of the funding mechanisms are such that it's highly likely to succeed. And so putting the money, regardless of the government program, if you can put the money in the people's hands, then you're going to have that decentralized consumer network that determines, like, if I think this particular product is good or bad, I'll tell people when it comes up, or when similar types of things come up in conversation. And that gives positive and negative feedback throughout the network, and then better and worse consumer decisions, or better over time, but better and worse consumer decisions are learned from, and then better and better decisions are adopted through time. And that's part of the reason why better products and better businesses grow over time, because of this reputation spread effect. And so when you have anything operating with that consumer network, it's going to be in its best, it's going to have the best long-term and medium-term outcomes. And then when you're talking about a special case like homelessness, government intervention can accelerate the sort of response of those programs by sort of forcing them to be focused on by that individual person. So if someone is homeless and they have mental health issues or drug addiction issues, and they're then I think you would have cause, if we have a UBI, or if you have any of these funding mechanisms, that money gets taken over by the local government, and then they put that person in the type of housing they need to be in. So if they're mentally ill, you don't want them just going in with Gen Pop. You want them to be around people who know how to handle them, know how to treat them, how to develop them and work with them. Maybe Gen Pop is good as long as you're not if you're violently mentally ill, then we're talking about jail. So I didn't consider that before I said that. So then yeah, I would assume like Gen Pop would be good for housing for them. You would then just have to mandate that they go to counseling, that they get on any medications that are prescribed from their psychiatrist. And obviously they have a certain amount of choice and they would have certain rights within this regard, but you'd need to push them in that direction. They'd have access to the free housing already. And in terms of drug addiction, I think that our general approach needs to shift from just what I consider further victimizing and challenging drug addicts by either fining them, so you're taking their money so they have to earn more money to live, or you're arresting them, giving them a record, and they then have to carry that forward, and that creates certain challenges for finding work. And then you have like people just losing tremendous years of their life, and you have a certain amount of institutionalization that can happen where people, I've seen it where people, even if they're in prison or out of prison, they just know they're going to go back. And so it's just a matter of time. So there's not even like this effort. It's just an inevitable thing to them. So there's not really this effort to try to change things. If you recognize that a drug addict has enough problems to begin with, as long as they're not committing any other crimes, to burden them further and punish them for being an addict, to me, only hurts the situation. And a better approach would be to have funding for and programs for rehabilitation, which basically means, in this, again, case scenario where you have a homeless person and we find out that they're addicted to drugs, they should automatically be sent, and they need to be taken out of their current situation, and they need to be sent to a different town and into a, well, maybe not a different town, but they need to be taken into a rehabilitation facility where they're mostly cut off from their social interactions and social network. They're off of social media. They just develop that new community and they get better. And then instead of, again, starting with the homeless person, instead of having them just go back to their original situation, we should try to change their circumstances as much as possible. So if in a particular town someone was a homeless person and they're addicted to drugs and they have some friends or anyone there that helps trigger that, or even just being there would likely help trigger those addiction sort of signals again, take them out of that town, put them in a different town afterwards, and then with counseling and if they have mental health issues, any drug, any medications they might need, and you just give them this sort of renewed sort of opportunity and a new space to reinvent themselves. That is, I think, the best course of action, both for the government and for society, in terms of solving this issue. On both of those fronts, obviously the drug addiction one, I'm just prescribing rehabilitation before incarceration, unless you commit worse crimes like theft or murder or something in the name of trying to support your habit. And then we need to make sure that everyone gets sufficient access to mental health services, which means that you put the resources in the hands of the consumer so that everyone has the ability, because everybody has the ability to access that particular good or service. And then on the other hand, you have the free market creating the goods and services so that you have the greatest amount, the greatest variety, the greatest quality, and you have constant innovation and growth in the entire sector and competition. And when you have that kind of demand, you're going to have a whole lot of people in the field, a whole lot of competition, a whole lot of variety of choice. So on those two fronts, that's how I would handle it. Now, I want to circle back to the housing, and I want to sort of make a generalized point about homeless people and people generally. One of the things that gives value to human beings in their life is their creative and productive capacity, their ability to use their own individual expression and ability to do something in the world, to create something or to produce something in the world. Not everyone's capacity to do that, even if you remove all of the handicaps like cost of living and they're on the right medications and this and that and the other thing, not everyone's ability to monetize themselves in capitalism, in the capitalist system, not everyone's creative and productive capacity within the economic system is going to be sufficient to cover cost of living or to help cover cost of all of these things that we're talking about. So by addressing and acknowledging that there's that fundamental eternal issue of poverty and that we're never going to fully fix it, and then you say the only problem with poor people is that they don't have the resources that rich people have, and thus if you bridge that gap, then it would hypothetically help the situation. So I believe in fixing that problem directly. If the issue is that poor people don't have the resources of rich people, give them extra resources, give everyone resources equally, same distribution to every single citizen across the country. That way you don't have any disruptions in the equality of under the law principle. That that type of a system, I think, can actually work, regardless of what you're talking about, whether you're talking about general living expenses or other sort of smaller programs like how we handle healthcare and other things. The best way to approach it is to have the decentralized consumer network in charge of the decision making. Let the people have the power. Like and subscribe, share. Let's continue to level up our political understanding, and I'll see you tomorrow.